What would you think if I told you that the reason men can't forget the woman who walks away has nothing to do with what she gives them, but everything to do with what she leaves behind? It's not her beauty, her charm, or even the love she once offered. No, it is something much deeper, something much more profound, an essence, an energy that he cannot easily erase, no matter how many years pass. Men are often captivated by what they cannot possess. In many ways, they are drawn not to the woman who is available, who gives them everything they desire, but to the woman who is elusive, the one who walks away. There is an undeniable mystery in her absence, a sense of loss that lingers long after the last conversation, the last glance. Why does this happen? Why does she haunt his thoughts long after she is gone, while others fade into the background of his life? The answer lies in a core psychological truth. The woman who walks away represents the unattainable, the very thing that stirs something primal in him. She is not a conquest to be won, nor a problem to be solved. She is a mirror, reflecting not only the man's desires, but also his own unresolved struggles, his unconscious projections, and his deepest fears. Her absence is a silent force that forces him to confront aspects of himself he may not be ready to face. And in this confrontation, he is forever changed. Carl Jung's work on the projection of the unconscious is key here. Jung argued that when we fail to recognize parts of ourselves, we project them onto others. The man who chases after the woman who walks away is often not chasing her at all. What he is chasing is the reflection of his own unmet desires, his own shadows, the parts of himself he is too afraid to confront. The more elusive she becomes, the more power she gains over him, because she is not just a woman. She is an embodiment of what he cannot have, what he cannot understand, what he cannot control. It is important to note that this phenomenon is not limited to men alone. All human beings, regardless of gender, are drawn to the unattainable. The human psyche craves mystery, complexity, and challenge. But there is something particularly poignant about the dynamic between a man and the woman who walks away. She is not playing a game. Rather, she is simply being, existing outside the boundaries of what he expects or desires from her. This is what unnerves him. And here lies the deeper psychological reality. When a woman walks away, it is not just a relationship that is left behind. It is also a world of expectations, projections, and unrealized fantasies. A man's ego, which thrives on control, struggles to let go of the idea that he could not possess her. And yet, in her absence, he is confronted with a profound lesson. True possession is an illusion. She was never his to control, never his to mold, and never his to keep. The woman who walks away teaches him that true connection does not come from ownership or control. She embodies the archetype of the anima, the unconscious feminine counterpart in every man, the mystery he cannot completely understand or tame. The anima is elusive by nature, a reflection of the man's own soul that he can never fully possess. When she leaves, she mirrors back to him his own limitations and the parts of his psyche that remain unexplored. And so he finds himself unable to forget her, not because of who she is, but because of what she forces him to confront. This is not a conscious process. The man may never articulate this feeling, may never realize what exactly draws him back to her, but the pull remains. It is as if she has entered the deepest corners of his psyche, where his shadows reside, and has unlocked something he didn't know was there. His unconscious mind cannot let go of the unresolved emotional tension that she represents, and as a result, he finds himself entangled in her memory. Perhaps you felt this as well. Perhaps you've known a man who was driven not by his love for you, but by the absence of you, by the things you left unsaid, the moments you didn't allow him to control, the pieces of you that remain forever untouchable. The truth is, he was never truly after you. He was after the parts of himself that you evoked, the parts of himself that longed to be free, to be whole, to be more than he had been allowed to be. You, the woman who walks away, were the catalyst for his transformation. This dynamic is not about playing hard to get, nor is it about manipulation. It is rather about stepping into your own power as a woman, not in a way that seeks to control, but in a way that understands the depths of your own value. When you walk away, you do not diminish yourself. You affirm your worth by refusing to settle for less than what you deserve. In doing so, you become a mirror to the man, not only showing him who he is, but also revealing to him who he could become should he dare to face the truth of his own heart. The woman who walks away is not just walking away from a man, she is walking toward herself. In her absence, she leaves behind a trail of transformation for herself and for him. And in this transformation, both are changed forever. And yet, despite the changes she instigates, the man remains haunted by the woman who walked away. His mind replays the moments, the conversations, the silences, over and over again. He cannot escape her, not because of what she did, but because of what she represented. She became a symbol of freedom, of power, of something untamed and ungovernable. She became the very embodiment of what he cannot control, cannot understand, and cannot possess. It is this tension that keeps her memory alive, that causes her to linger in his thoughts long after she is gone. He cannot stop thinking about her, not because he still desires her, but because she challenged everything he thought he knew about love, about power, about control. The woman who walks away is the one who defies the conventional rules of attraction, who doesn't conform to the patterns he's accustomed to. She refuses to be boxed in, and in doing so, she sets off a cascade of realizations within him. Her departure forces him to grapple with his own ego. The ego, in Jungian terms, is the part of us that seeks to maintain control, that wants to shape the world to fit our desires. It is the mask we wear, the identity we present to the world. The man who is captivated by the woman who walks away is faced with the stark reality that his ego is powerless in the face of her absence. He cannot manipulate or control her actions, cannot demand her attention or affection. She is free, and in her freedom she exposes the fragility of his own sense of self. This confrontation with the limits of his ego is where true transformation begins. The man who cannot forget the woman who walks away is in fact on the precipice of his own individuation, the process by which one integrates the unconscious and conscious parts of the self, as Jung would say. The woman represents the unconscious, the wild, the parts of him that have been suppressed or ignored. When she walks away, she forces him to confront these parts, the parts he may not want to see, the parts that challenge his carefully constructed identity. It is in this confrontation that the real work begins, for it is only by facing the parts of ourselves that we have long buried that we can truly evolve. The woman who walks away holds up a mirror to the man, and in that reflection, he begins to see himself in a new light. No longer can he deny the parts of him that he has ignored or rejected. He must face them, integrate them, and in doing so, become more whole. But this process is not easy. The ego resists change. It is much easier to project our unmet desires and fears onto others than to confront the difficult truths within ourselves. Yet the woman who walks away is not interested in playing this game. She is not there to fix him, to be the object of his desires, or to serve as a tool for his ego's growth. She walks away not out of malice, but out of a deep understanding of her own worth. She knows that the greatest gift she can give to herself and to him is the gift of absence. In this absence, the man is forced to confront his own shadows. He cannot escape them because they are now intertwined with his memory of her. The more he attempts to suppress or deny these shadows, the more they grow until they loom large in his life, shaping his relationships, his desires, his very sense of self. The woman who walked away becomes a symbol of everything he has avoided, everything he has yet to accept about himself. And it is in this unresolved tension that his transformation begins. Perhaps deep down, he realizes that it is not her he desires so much as the potential she represents, the freedom she embodies, the power to walk away, to choose herself without hesitation. It is in this realization that he begins to understand that the true source of his obsession is not her absence, but his own inability to fully embrace his own freedom, to let go of the need for control. He sees for the first time that his own happiness does not depend on possessing her, on keeping her, on bending her to his will. The woman who walks away offers him a powerful lesson. True love is not about possession. It is not about control, about locking someone down or making them stay. It is about choice. Love, in its truest form, is a dance of freedom and mutual respect, where both partners are free to be themselves, to grow, to evolve. The woman who walks away understands this. She knows that the greatest gift she can give to herself and to him is the gift of independence, the ability to choose her own path, and the courage to walk away when that path no longer aligns with her own truth. This is the paradox of the woman who walks away. In her absence, she teaches the man more than he could ever learn in her presence. She shows him the limits of his own ego, the fragility of his sense of control, and the truth of his own desires. She forces him to face the parts of himself that he has long denied. And in doing so, she leaves a permanent mark on his soul. The woman who walks away is not forgotten. She is etched into his memory, not because of what she gave him, but because of what she took with her, his illusions, his projections, his ego-driven fantasies, and in her wake she leaves behind a man who is forever changed. As time passes, the man may try to move on, to replace her with someone new, someone more attainable, someone who fits neatly into the boxes he so carefully constructed. But no one else can ever quite measure up. The woman who walked away leaves a void that cannot be filled by anyone else, because it is not a void of desire, it is a void of understanding. She represented something deeper, something the man was not ready to confront in himself. She challenged him in ways no other woman ever could, not because of who she was, but because of what she awakened in him. And in this sense, the woman who walks away is like a shadow that lingers long after the light has passed. She remains with him, not as a haunting memory of love lost, but as a reminder of a part of himself that he has yet to integrate. His unconscious mind is still trying to process the loss, still grappling with the psychological truth she forced him to confront, that control is an illusion, that possession is a fleeting concept, and that true connection cannot be defined by external factors. The man's longing for her, then, is not a longing for the woman herself, but a longing for the self he could not recognize within her presence. The woman who walked away gave him a mirror, reflecting all of his unconscious fears and desires. She forced him to look into that mirror, and in doing so, she revealed to him the cracks in his own ego. It is in this revelation that the real power of her departure lies. For the man who cannot forget the woman who walks away is never the same as he was before. She has ignited something in him, something that burns with the truth of his own limitations, his own repressed emotions, and his unacknowledged desires. He is now, whether he acknowledges it or not, on a path of transformation, and this path can only be walked alone. The process of individuation, as Jung would describe it, requires an individual to integrate the parts of the self that have been hidden or repressed. The woman who walks away represents the opportunity for this process. She is not the catalyst that forces him to change, no, that comes from within. But her absence is the final push, the psychological spark that lights the fire of self-exploration. In walking away, she leaves him with nothing but the pieces of himself he has been avoiding. As he picks up those pieces, he begins to realize that his obsession with her was never about her at all. It was about what she represented, the parts of him that longed for freedom, for autonomy, for self-acceptance. These parts were always there, hidden beneath the layers of his ego. But it took her absence, her walking away, to crack open the shell he had built around himself, to reveal what was hidden inside. And as he begins to heal, as he starts to understand the depth of his own desires and needs, he will come to understand that the woman who walked away was never meant to stay. She was meant to teach him, to show him the truth of his own soul, and to guide him to a place where he could no longer hide from himself. In this way, the woman who walks away is a teacher, not because of what she says, but because of what she leaves behind. She leaves a man who is no longer the same, a man who has been forced to confront his own shadows, his own fears, and his own unconscious projections. And in doing so, he begins to understand that his true journey is not toward another woman, but toward himself. This is why men cannot forget the woman who walks away. It is not about love, nor is it about loss. It is about the profound psychological transformation that her departure instigates. Her absence creates a space for him to become more whole, more authentic, and more aware of the parts of himself he had long neglected. And though he may try to move on, to fill the void she left behind with someone else, he will never be able to. For the woman who walks away is not just a memory. She is a catalyst, a reminder that true connection can never come from external forces, but must come from within. The woman who walks away in her quiet strength has taught him the greatest lesson of all, that true freedom, true power, and true love can only be found when we stop trying to control, to possess, and to demand. It is in the freedom to choose, to walk away, to stand in our own power that we become truly whole. And in that, the man who cannot forget her will finally realize that the greatest gift she gave him was not her presence, but her absence. The space to discover himself, to confront his shadows, and to finally choose his own path. As the man grapples with the absence of the woman who walked away, he begins to understand that the true nature of his longing is rooted in a deeper, more profound shift within himself. The woman's departure has unearthed his own unconscious desires, fears, and unresolved wounds. The space she left behind is not just emotional, it is psychological, filled with fragments of himself he had been unwilling to acknowledge. These are the parts that are now rising to the surface, calling for integration, for healing. This process is not unlike the journey of individuation that Carl Jung so profoundly described, the path to wholeness that requires an individual to confront the unconscious and reconcile the fragmented parts of the self. The man is no longer simply mourning the woman who walked away. He is now beginning to mourn the parts of himself he has neglected, the parts he was too afraid to face. In her absence, she has become the catalyst for his own growth, his own transformation. Her absence, paradoxically, fills him with an aching clarity, urging him to face what lies beneath the surface of his own soul. For a time, he may try to distract himself, to push away the feelings of longing and loss. He may seek comfort in new relationships, in work, in external validation. But no matter how much he fills the void with distractions, the truth remains. He cannot forget the woman who walked away because she forced him to confront himself in ways no one else could. She became the mirror that reflected back not just his desire, but his need for self-awareness, for emotional independence, for acceptance of his own vulnerabilities. The woman who walked away did not do so out of cruelty. She did not walk away in order to hurt him. She walked away because she understood something deeply about herself, that her worth could not be defined by anyone else, that her freedom was not a negotiable condition, and that true love required her to remain true to herself above all else. In choosing to walk away, she chose herself, and in doing so, she became a lesson for him, one that would resonate long after she was gone. Jung often spoke of the importance of embracing both the light and the shadow within ourselves. It is through the integration of these seemingly opposing aspects that we can truly become whole. The man who cannot forget the woman who walked away is confronted with this very truth. She has unknowingly invited him to look at his own shadows, to face the parts of himself that he had previously avoided or denied. These parts are not bad or wrong. They are simply aspects of him that have been neglected or repressed. The process of individuation, Jung believed, involves the painful but necessary task of reconciling these parts, of accepting them as integral to who we are. In the case of this man, the woman who walked away became the embodiment of his own shadow, the parts of himself that he had not yet integrated. His desire for her, his obsession with her absence, is a reflection of his struggle to accept these aspects of himself. As he continues to process this emotional upheaval, he must come to terms with the fact that he cannot change the past. He cannot force her to stay, and he cannot undo the lessons she has taught him through her absence. What he can do, however, is choose how he will move forward. Will he continue to chase after the elusive? Will he remain trapped in the cycle of longing and loss? Or will he, like her, choose himself, choose growth, healing, and the courage to face the parts of himself he had long ignored? The woman who walked away has given him the gift of freedom, though he may not fully realize it yet. She has given him the space to understand that love is not about possession, that power is not about control, and that true connection cannot be forced or manufactured. She has shown him that in order to truly love another, we must first learn to love ourselves, in all our complexity, all our flaws, all our contradictions. She has, in her absence, become the teacher he never knew he needed. And in this process of self-discovery, the man finds himself confronting his own illusions. He realizes that his desire to control, to hold on to something that was never his to begin with, was rooted in fear, fear of inadequacy, fear of vulnerability, fear of being alone. But now, as he begins to let go of these fears, he opens himself up to the possibility of a deeper, more authentic connection, one that is not based on need, but on mutual respect and freedom. The woman who walked away has not abandoned him. She has given him the opportunity to see beyond the confines of his ego, to break free from the chains of attachment and desire that have bound him for so long. She has shown him that true love is not about clinging to something, but about letting it go, about giving each other the space to grow, to become whole, and to choose each other freely. In this realization, the man is finally free. Free, not because he has let go of her, but because he has let go of the need to possess her. Free not because she has walked away, but because in her walking away, he has learned to choose himself. He has learned that the greatest gift a woman can give a man, and the greatest gift he can give himself, is the freedom to be who he truly is, without the need for external validation, without the need for control, without the need for anything other than the deep knowing that he is enough, just as he is. As the man continues to process the absence of the woman who walked away, something profound begins to shift within him. He realizes that his longing, the echo of her departure, is not a reflection of something he lost, but rather a manifestation of something within himself that had been left untouched, waiting for him to confront it. Her absence has become the space in which he finds his own transformation. The truth begins to dawn on him. The woman who walked away was never just an object of desire, nor was she merely a person to be loved. She was, in a deeper sense, a mirror that reflected not only his longing, but also his weaknesses, his fears, his hidden desires, and his unconscious assumptions about himself. The woman who walked away allowed him to see the parts of himself that were buried, unacknowledged, or neglected. She had shown him a path to personal liberation, one that would lead him out of the confines of ego and into the expansive territory of self-awareness. At first, the man may resist this shift. He may still cling to the idea that it was her absence, her refusal to stay, that is the source of his pain. He may attempt to fill the emptiness she left behind with distractions, new relationships, or temporary fixes. But the more he tries to replace her, the more he realizes that she cannot be replaced. What she gave him was not something external, something to be possessed or held on to. It was an inner awakening, a reminder that he had been living under the illusion of control, of ownership, of expectations. Through her absence, he comes to understand that he has been living with a distorted view of what love and connection truly are. He realizes that he had approached love with the desire to possess, to own, to bind. And in doing so, he had robbed himself and others of the real freedom that comes with unconditional love. He begins to see that true love does not come from control or attachment, but from the ability to allow the other person to be exactly who they are, free from the confines of expectation or obligation. This realization does not come easily. It requires the man to let go of the fantasies he had built around the woman who walked away, the fantasies of what could have been, of what he thought she was, of how he thought he could shape her into his ideal. These illusions must be shattered, for only in their destruction can the man begin to rebuild himself, to reconnect with the truth of who he is. He begins to see that the need to control is rooted in fear, fear of loss, fear of abandonment, fear of being unworthy of love. And as he works through this fear, he starts to discover a new kind of strength, one that does not depend on possessing or controlling others, but on embracing the unknown, on accepting the fluidity of life, on surrendering to the ebb and flow of relationships. For the woman who walked away, it was never about rejecting him. It was about choosing herself, choosing her freedom, choosing the integrity of her own path. In choosing to walk away, she reminded him of the importance of freedom, the freedom to grow, to change, to evolve without being bound by the expectations or projections of another. She did not do this to hurt him. She did it because she understood the deepest truth, that true love comes not from sacrifice, but from the willingness to honor oneself first. And this is what the man begins to understand in the aftermath of her departure. Love, in its truest sense, is about giving the other person the space to be themselves, free from the weight of obligation. It is not about fitting them into your mold, about trying to make them something they are not, or about holding on to them for your own comfort. It is about allowing them to be whole on their own, and in turn, becoming whole yourself. When two people come together in love, they are not merging their identities. They are merging their freedom, allowing each other to be who they are without compromise. The man who cannot forget the woman who walked away finds himself at a crossroads. He can choose to remain trapped in the cycle of longing to continue to chase the illusion of possession, or he can choose to embrace the lessons she has left behind. He can choose to break free from the chains of his own ego, to release the need for control, and to step into the freedom of true love. A love that is not bound by the limitations of ownership, but that is rooted in mutual respect, trust, and the understanding that each person is an individual worthy of their own space. In this moment of choice, he begins to realize that his journey is not about finding another woman to replace her. It is about finding himself. It is about learning to be whole on his own, to love himself first, and to step into a place of emotional freedom. This freedom is the true gift she has given him. Through her absence, she has taught him to reclaim his own power, to let go of the need for validation, and to choose a path of self-empowerment. As he walks this new path, he carries the lessons of the woman who walked away with him. She remains with him, not as a distant memory of love lost, but as a guiding force, a beacon that illuminates the way forward. He no longer chases after her. Instead, he walks forward with the clarity and strength she unknowingly instilled in him. He understands now that it is not about finding someone to complete him, but about embracing his own wholeness and allowing others to do the same. The woman who walked away did not abandon him. She liberated him. As the man continues his journey of self-discovery, something profound begins to emerge from the depths of his soul. The woman who walked away, once seen as the catalyst for his pain, has now become a symbol of liberation, not just for herself, but for him as well. He begins to see her absence not as a void, but as an opening, a space in which he can finally breathe, finally grow. Her departure has become the threshold through which he steps into his own truth, shedding the illusions that had once defined him. The more he moves forward, the clearer it becomes. He was never truly attached to her in the way he once thought. His attachment was to the idea of her, to the projection of what she could provide, to the fantasy of what their relationship could be. It was not her presence that held him captive, but his own unmet needs, his own projections, his own desires to possess something that was never meant to be owned. He had woven an ideal around her, an ideal that was both beautiful and restrictive, and in doing so, he had lost sight of the most important truth, that love is not about possession, but about freedom. Through this process, the man learns to let go of the fantasies and illusions that once bound him. He begins to see that the woman who walked away was never meant to be the solution to his inner struggles. She was not meant to fill the gaps in his soul or to fix the broken parts of him. She was simply a reflection, a mirror that showed him the work he needed to do within himself. She was the catalyst that forced him to confront the aspects of himself he had long ignored. She was the invitation to step into the light of his own consciousness, to heal, to grow, and to evolve into the person he was always meant to be. As he reflects on the woman who walked away, he begins to understand that the real transformation is not about her, it is about him. He realizes that she was never the key to his happiness. The key was always within him, waiting to be unlocked. The woman who walked away simply created the conditions for him to discover this truth. Her absence was not an abandonment, but a gift. The gift of space, of silence, of freedom. And in this space, the man begins to rebuild himself. No longer does he define his worth by what he can possess or control. He begins to reconnect with his own desires, his own passions, and his own sense of purpose. He starts to cultivate a life that is no longer dependent on external validation, no longer seeking to fill the voids left by others. He starts to see that true fulfillment comes from within, and that love, real love, can only exist when both individuals are whole, when both are free to choose each other without fear, without expectation, without the need to possess. The man begins to realize that the woman who walked away was a teacher in disguise, and he was the student. She taught him that love is not about clinging, but about letting go. She taught him that true connection is built on respect, on the freedom to be oneself without fear of judgment or rejection. She taught him that the deepest form of love is the love that is given freely, without strings, without manipulation. And as he integrates these lessons into his own life, he becomes a man who is no longer defined by the past, no longer haunted by the specter of lost love. He becomes a man who knows that his worth is not contingent upon anyone's presence in his life. He learns that love is not something to be chased, but something to be chosen. He understands that relationships, the healthiest, most fulfilling relationships, are built on mutual respect and the freedom to grow, to change, and to evolve. He begins to see that he, too, is free. Free from the expectations of others, free from the need for validation, and most importantly, free from the chains of his own ego. The man who once could not forget the woman who walked away now understands that she was never the problem. The problem was his own attachment, his own fear of loss, his own projections and illusions. As he moves forward, he learns to choose relationships that are rooted in freedom and respect, not possession and control. He understands now that the best relationships are those where both individuals are free to be themselves, free to grow, and free to love without fear of losing one another. The woman who walked away is no longer the source of his pain. She has become the source of his growth, his transformation, and his freedom. She has taught him that love is not about keeping, but about letting go. And in letting go, he has found something far more powerful than possession. He has found peace, self-love, and the courage to stand in his own truth. And as he stands in this newfound freedom, he understands that the greatest lesson of all has been learned. The woman who walks away is not a loss. She is a gift that opens the door to self-discovery, to personal liberation, and to the possibility of real, lasting love. The man who walks away from the illusion of ownership, from the need to possess, and from the fear of abandonment, is the man who has found himself. And in this transformation, he realizes that he no longer needs to chase love. He no longer needs to chase anyone. Because the woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.